What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto was raised by the Joker, or what if Naruto had a shape-shifting bloodline and was insane, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was taken over by the Kyuubi when he was born, or what if Naruto was trained by Itachi after leaving Jiraiya, go check out my second channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Naruto observed his opponent with careful calculation, his Muramasa shifting slightly in his hands. Slowly he moved, circling his foe like some predator of old, waiting for an opening with which he could launch his assault. The battle needed to be decided quickly. A single strike to the vital point. At 11 of age, Naruto is at a serious disadvantage. Brawn-wise, speed must be the deciding factor. With fluidity uncommon in the soldier ranks, Naruto brought the long Nodachi behind him, allowing one side of the cold metallic surface of the sword to rest against his back. His right hand, which had been gripping the hilt of the blade, tightened. He could feel his muscle tensing as he got ready to strike, storing up energy for that one explosive moment in which rests victory or defeat. The Buster Sword came crashing down, missing him by a hair's breadth as the young swordsman leapt away, bring his own blade forward in a diagonal slash. As his opponent tried to raise the gigantic blade to defend him, Naruto had launched a roundhouse kick, the sole of his shoe slamming into the Buster Swordsman's knuckle. The man hissed in pain as he dropped the blade and charged at Naruto with his bare hands. Naruto sidestepped the right hook with grace, a taunting smile hanging upon his face, which now bore an uncanny resemblance to the soldier commander Sephiroth. As he had expected, the superior leer he had donned had driven his opponent wild, the man's movement becoming irregular and uncontrolled, leaving a great deal of his body exposed and open. It was then Naruto went for the kill. His blade, which he had once again brought behind him, streaked forward like lightning, its point pressing painfully into the Buster user's neck, drawing a trickle of blood. Yield, the blonde commanded, his eyes unreadable, or die. The Buster user gave the blonde swordsman a smirk of defiance. You don't think I'd give up that easily, do you? With that, the ground beneath Naruto gave away, and the boy leapt from the sinking earth, though his face is still. That maddening mask of void surprise showed in the young man's eyes. Quake, he said, recognizing the spell. A weak one, but effectively utilized. You must have been preparing the attack the entire time we were fighting. The Buster user nodded as he picked up his discarded blade, sparing no breath. It had been rather difficult concentrating on two things at the same time, but he had managed, though barely. Another few seconds of fighting, and the magic had been gathering would have spun out of control, though to be fair, the Buster user thought in slightly annoyance as he stared at the bottomless chasm that formed before him. To call the spell weak is a little insulting. Not everyone is a magic freak like Naruto who could pull an Ultima out of his ass if needed. Let's get this on. The Buster swordsman growled as he held the sword diagonally to the ground, its tip digging into the soft earth. With a shout, he charged the Buster sword, dragging behind him its point, leaving a long ditch in the ground as the man ran. As Naruto's Muramasa descended down towards him, the Buster user swung his own blade upward, deflecting the otherwise deadly blow. Using the momentum to his advantage, the Buster swordsman performed a backflip and landed a few feet away. Even as he uprighted himself, Naruto had charged, and the two fighters were soon lost in a flurry of blows, accompanied occasionally by the sound of slashing and the contact of metals. The Buster user gritted his teeth in annoyance as he tried to force back his younger foe, using his own incredible strength as an advantage. Unfortunately, he was not able to keep up with the almost eye-blurring speed of the long katana, and felt several times the sword scoring against his skin. Naruto, on the other hand, was not fare much better, as each time their weapons collided, the impact had sent a wave of numbness up his arms. It was only a matter of time before he would be forced to part with the taller swordsman. Again the blades met, and again Naruto felt his own sword jarring his hands painfully. This is not good. By now Naruto felt the slightest twinge of annoyance burrowing its slithering way into his heart. Victory is not so important to him, but this infuriating feeling of continuous suppression, a trapped and caged feeling, on the other hand, is getting to him. Since he had spent his day with a certain black-haired soldier, Naruto had slowly broken the shell of lifelessness that had surrounded him all his life. He had begun to understand the concept of joy and sorrow, the ideas of happiness and grief, but he had also come to understand the powers of anger and hate and frustration. He could summon the great king of dragons Bahamut, or he could consign this place to its destruction with a flare spell, but that would not do. This is a friendly spar, a measurement of his achievements. This is a test of his physical capabilities, and that is the way he will have it remain. Let's us end this sack, he addressed his opponent and sparring partner calmly. Breaking the stalemate exchange of blows, Zack grinned at his younger friend and nodded, feeling tired. "Are we the first-class soldier?" taunted, but as he tried to step forward he winced in sudden pain. "Damn, looks like you got me better than I thought." "Well, alright, we'll take a break. Besides, I got to take a look at how our buddy Cloud is doing, so have fun doing whatever you're doing, K." And with that the two left the decimated sparring grounds. Cloud Strife is not having a good day for the umpteenth time. The blonde questioned the wisdom of having Zack and Naruto for friends. True, as their companion and comrade in arms, Cloud had access to things forbidden to the common masses, and he was also able to hone his skill under some of the best soldier, not to mention Sephiroth himself. When the silver-haired sword master was not out on a mission yet, having those two for friends also meant that his life was constantly hanging on a thread. This survival training, as Zack had so graciously dubbed it, is as far as Cloud was concerned, created by a madman, for no one of sane mind would possibly consider put anyone in this godforsaken place. The concept of the course is simple. Like most difficult things in life, all Cloud had to do was stay in that patch of artificial jungle for a week, and during that time he must fend for himself in ways of food, shelter, and the occasional dangerous foe that had wandered into his territory. The key word being occasional. The raven-haired Buster Swordsman had said absolutely nothing about a seemingly endless army of bloodthirsty robots on the prowl. Then again, with Zack you never get the full story. With a sigh, Cloud brought up his defender and deflected an incoming stream of bullets. The Gatling bot before him made a clicking sound as it spent the last of its ammos, and then began to beat a hasty retreat. "These things may not be alive, but they are smart." "No you don't," Cloud growled as mana pulsed in his free hand, extending his palm towards the fleeing machine. The blonde swordsman launched his spell. Thunder blinding bolts of lightning rained mercilessly upon the machine and its surroundings, destroying all that had been caught in its brilliant path. The incredible energy of the spell fused sand to glass and turned trees to nothing more than scorched ash. The robot had received the majority of the punishment, and now little more than scrap metal had remained. Unfortunately, Cloud had no time to celebrate his victory, as three more robots, all heavily armed, stomped onto the scene, their cannons pointing warningly at him. Biting back a curse, Cloud readied himself, although he knows all too well that his sword would do little against plasma cannons such as those. But before the yellow-haired swordsman could formulate a plan, he heard several slashing sounds in the background, and his would-be attackers fell harmlessly to the earth in pieces. A lone soldier stood before him wearing the traditional dark blue combat uniform, Buster sword in hand. "Zack," Cloud called, lowering his sword in relief. "If Zack is here, it means that he could finally get out of this place in one piece." Zack turned to Cloud and flashed him an infamous smile, one that promised much trouble. "So Cloud, good to see that you made it." Before Cloud could answer, Zack had interrupted him. "Anyway, love to stay and chat, but we really have to run." And to emphasize his point, the teen jerked his right thumb back at the place from where he had come as Cloud stared at the broken trail left by the Buster user. He thought he could detect some movements of to the distance. "Mechanical movements, you moron," Cloud groaned as he realized what Zack had done. "You just brought the whole friggin' machine army on our heads." Zack looked a little embarrassed. "Ah, come on," he said, trying to cover up his mistake. "It's not that bad. I mean, with the two of us we could take on whatever they throw at us. Just think of this as an extension of your survival exercise." However, he did not finish when several very well armed combat robots emerged from the destroyed trail, their mechanical eye whirling as they locked onto their two targets. "Zack, I fucking hate you," Cloud growled as he brought his sword forth. His words were soon lost amidst the roar of guns as the robots opened fire on the two swordsmen. "This is going to be a very long day." Atop a cliff that overlooked Midgar stood a single figure. The figure wore a black clock held closed in the middle by a long silver zipper that ran the entire length of the wear. A hood of the same material connected to the collar of the cloak was pulled over the stranger's face so that his identity remained an enigma. Twin chains hung down the cloak at the base of the hood, one on each side of the zipper. A third chain lay in between them, connecting the two ends of the cloak's collar, forming an upside-down arc. From beneath the shadow of the hood, twin glowing eyes watched the world below him. This place was a sanctum to him, untouched by the hands of men. It is here that he could be alone with his thoughts as he ponders upon the meaning of his existence. Once perhaps he did not question the reason for which he was brought to this world. Once he had followed orders like holy right, but as time passed, as he had come to see more of the world beyond the lab in which he had been raised, doubt grew in his mind. So far from the laboratory of his birth can give rise to strange thoughts, doubts about the experiment that had made him what he is, doubts about his purpose, and doubts about his own existence. Death, it seems, was the only reason for which he was created. He was born to bring death to the world. He was the sword that Shinra wielded against those that opposed them. He was not unaware of this, his purpose made clear long ago, and yet he could not help but feel a strange emptiness, as though there should be more than that, that his existence should have a Greater meaning. This is my life, Naruto whispered to the silent winds as he continued to behold the city that once bore him. Although he could not explain it, the words felt hollow and decrepit. A lie, what life is there for one who dealt only death? He still remembered that girl no older than himself kneeling in a pool of blood with tears streaming down her face. She had called him a monster. It had hurt then, and it hurt now still whenever he recalls that memory. Why does it hurt? Naruto did not understand. He had killed tens of thousands. His hands dyed red with blood. He had walked through carnages that should only appear in men's darkest nightmare, a carnage he himself had caused. He was called the Angel of Death, the Grim Reaper who took life with every breath. So why did that single memory stand so vivid in his mind? Those ninjas were no different than any of the others he had faced, yet the voice of that little girl pierced his very soul. Was it because of some unknown power the girl had placed in her voice, or was it because he knew that those words spoke by that sinless voice was the truth, a truth he did not wish to face? Monster Zack had told him once, is a creature born without soul, its existence rendered meaningless, it seeks only to destroy. Was he the same? Naruto wondered as he began to walk away from the slope. Did he too lack a soul that made him human? Was he really nothing more than a monster dressed in mortal skin? Or maybe, just maybe, the pain he had felt in his heart came from a soul he did not know he had. Was that why the voice of that girl haunted him so? Because deep down past the Mako he was still human. The thought brought a soft smile to his face, a temporary refuge from the pain. He had learned to smile more often now, his friendship with Zack and Cloud slowly melting away the armor of ice that had encased his spirit. He still had trouble laughing or crying or displaying the emotions that rose from extremes, but he is learning and improving. Naruto behind him, a sudden voice spoke up, calm and soft. Commander Sephiroth. Naruto turned and acknowledged his mentor. The silver-haired swordsman stood a few feet away, one of his hands resting upon the hilt of his Masamune. I did not anticipate your presence. Sephiroth chuckled and turned away from Naruto. I was observing your practice session with that soldier Zack. You have improved a great deal since I last saw you then. He made a gesture of dismissal. At any rate, I have come to tell you that you are to accompany me on a mission to check on a Mako reactor. Of course, I shall get ready right away, Naruto replied coolly. Where are we going? Nibelheim, came the soft answer, and although none of them knew it yet, that small mountain town would change their fate in ways not even the gods could have foreseen. It is there that the destiny of the planet was passed from the ancients to human hands. Whether destruction or salvation awaits, that world became the choice of those that dwelled upon it. Several days later. This is awesome, Zack shouted in the confine of the moving vehicle, pumping his fist to emphasize the point. Of course, he was the only one that seemed excited by the prospect. Sephiroth and Naruto had like always kept to themselves, silent and composed. Cloud, on the other hand, looked apprehensive, his hands somewhat sweaty, the defender sword tied to his back. Come on, you guys, Zack said as he turned to his less than responsive companions. We finally got a worthwhile mission. It was true in some ways. After the war with Wutai was over, there was not much else to do for the soldier but clean up the mess left behind. Being as they were a people created for conflict, such peacekeeping duties did not sit well with those legendary enforcers of Shinra. Turk would have been better equipped to handle such trivial matters, but now with this mission ahead them, things are beginning to look up. Mako reactors usually attracted monsters' attention, and where there are monsters on the prowl there are sure to be actions. Calm yourselves, Sephiroth spoke at last, his green eyes cold and distant. This is not a joyride. We have words that certain monsters and shady individuals have been prowling around the vicinity of the reactor. It may be possible that remnants of the Rising Dragon faction are behind this, so be on your guard. If you get into trouble, I will not be there to save you. Rising Dragon Syndicate is a Wutai military group established several years before the fall of Wutai, an independent organization that reports to no higher power. The RDS have actively supported Goto in his fight against Shinra, supplying Wutai with technology, materia, and ultimately soldiers. However, when Wutai fell, the RDS did not disband, but became a rebel group that continued to resist Shinra's takeover attempts. Because of this, many Wutais saw the Rising Dragon Syndicate as heroes of sorts, and because of the high resentment that the younger generation of Wutai held for Midgar and Shinra, the ranks of the RDS only grew. After the defeat Wutai suffered at the hands of their most bitter enemies, although their members are mostly ordinary civilians with no real power, they have nevertheless managed to cause much grief for the average populace of Midgar and the surrounding areas. It seems that unlike Avalanche, the eco-terrorist bent on overthrowing Shinra to restore the planet, the RDS had no specific goal in mind. As long as it upset the order that Shinra tried to maintain, it was fine with them for the past year. They have engaged in everything ranging from large-scale demolition to sabotage and vandalism. Zack shook his head with a laugh. Those prissy don't make me laugh though. Arrogant Zack nevertheless had a point. While the RDS had terrorized the masses and have become a menace to society, to the battle-hardened soldier who had faced death on a daily basis and whose hands are stained with the remains of the monsters that wandered the land, these rebels are nothing more than clowns. So what if they killed a few civilian or blew up some public building? In the many years of Shinra's founding, human life were never very high up the list of valuables. Sephiroth smirked at the raven-haired teen's display. Even if the boy had just celebrated his 18th birthday, he is still little better than a buffoon, a powerful buffoon, but a buffoon nonetheless. A soldier is supposed to be collected and passive and reserved. Zack, however, seemed to be rather lacking in all these areas. It was some sort of miracle or a divine joke, as Sephiroth is vehemently convinced that the youth even made first class, let alone one of the most powerful first class out there. Do not underestimate your foes. The commander of the soldier began brushing away a strand of silver hair from his face. There are reports of several high-ranked ninjas joining the syndicate, and if they were to show themselves on this mission, it could prove to be an undesirable complication. Zack grunted and turned to Cloud, hoping for a more receptive audience. So Nibelheim is your hometown, isn't it? The blonde swordsman looked a little green as he stared back at Zack, whether from motion sickness or anticipation it was hard to tell. He nodded, hoping Zack would drop the subject. Actually, he had hoped Zack would keep silent, but knowing his friend, he went for the next best thing. Unfortunately, Zack was infamous for his inability to read people, so Cloud's wish was not granted. Somewhere out there the spirit of the ancient is laughing in the life streams. What are you going to doing? At Cloud's side, and decided to answer. He didn't have to, but the Zack would just pester him until he did. It was better if he saved Zack the trouble. I guess I'll go and see my family and friends, that's all. Zack sweat dropped anime style. That's rather anticlimactic. Naruto could not help but roll his eyes. The expression of exasperation is something he picked up from Cloud, and in his dealings with the Buster user, the blonde had employed the expression an awful lot. Not everyone expect parades and fireworks, he said softly, his voice cold and detached. Zack shrugged as the coldness flew right over him. He had learned to ignore the tone of Naruto's voice for quite a while now, knowing that the blonde did not use it on purpose. The experiment that had gave him unimaginable strength also destroyed his ability to produce even the simplest of a smile. He may be learning how to have emotions, but his people skill is still non-existent. Well, one step at a time. While I don't expect firework either, but I at least thought that he had, a childhood sweetheart that he could show off to. Naruto simply shook his head. Zack's mind seemed always to be revolving around the female gender for reasons he could not comprehend. He remembered a few months ago Zack had forced him to get some new threads, namely the cloak he is now sporting. He had no idea why, for as far as he could see, cloth is simply something that human needed for warmth. When Zack heard this, he had launched into one of his hour-long speech about how clothing is important in attracting the opposite sex. Thankfully, Cloud had walked in and reminded Zack that Naruto had not yet hit puberty. Then there are the stacks of adult magazine that Zack had thought to be well hidden under his bunk, but whose location are known to every soldier and Turks, most of whom would take the liberty of borrowing one or two issues when they need to relieve themselves. However, what Naruto had not expected was that Cloud's face colored ever so slightly at the mention of a sweetheart. It was surprising, since Cloud was usually a no-nonsense kind of person, and Naruto had fully expected him to scoff off the comment. Zack had caught Cloud's look of embarrassment and began to grin like a lecherous old man who had just gotten a peek at a girl's unmentionables. Well, Cloud, you sly old dog, out with it. Come on, I'm gonna need name description and phone numbers and address. Old habit. Sorry, just ignore the last part. Cloud blushed deepened somewhat, and the swordsman scratched his face. Well, it's not really a sweetheart, just this girl I made a promise to a few years back when I first left for Midgar. At this, his eyes grew distant in remembrance, and a soft smile graced his face. We weren't really friends, he explained, and Naruto smirked a little at Zack's look of disappointment. But since everyone was leaving Nibelheim to find jobs at other places, we started to hang out more often. Then just before I left, I sort of made a promise to her that if I ever became successful and she should be in some sort of trouble, I'd rescue her. Well, something along that line. Naruto and Sephiroth were both silent and plain uncaring as they listened to the story. Sephiroth, because he had no time to waste in childish affairs such as this, and Naruto because he simply don't understand the situation. Zack, however, walked over to Cloud and clapped him on the back soundly. Real smooth, Romeo. So tell me, is she hot, this girl of yours? He did not finish as the car came to a sudden stop and an earth-shaking roar sounded outside. What the hell? Cloud cried and was on his feet at once, the defender sword out. Zack had also drawn his own weapon and readied himself for an attack. Both Naruto and Sephiroth had summoned their respective swords and listened for any sound that may indicate the problem. Seconds later, a distraught Shinra guard stumbled into the back of the carriage, bleeding profusely in One arm, we are under attack, a monster, he stammered before fainting due to blood loss. Again the roar sounded, this time closer and much more angry. Sephiroth turned to the others. Naruto, come with me. Zack and Cloud, go and secure the vehicle and the materials. This may or may not be a trap, so proceed with caution. Zack nodded seriously, knowing that the time for jokes has passed. Grabbing Cloud, the two of them leapt out of the car and headed for the driver compartment, followed a few moments later by Naruto and Sephiroth. A dragon stood outside, bits flames erupting from its nostrils. Its emerald body towered over the truck, which looked like toy by comparison. With a bloodthirsty war cry, the dragon swung his mighty tail and swatted away several Shinra soldiers that had shot at its seemingly impenetrable body. Then, before the soldiers could get to their feet, the dragon opened its maw and a blast of blistering fire exploded from its throat, consuming the soldiers whole. When the flames had died down, only ashes remained. This is an odd creature, it does not seem to be native to this land. Be careful of your actions. QB spoke up softly. The creature at the back of his mind had been silent for quite a while after the incident with the little Wutai girl, but had gradually become vocal again. Naruto was just about to agree and surrender his control to the dark QB when Sephiroth moved. The soldier commander's blade flashed out like chained lightning strike with blinding speed at the monster's vital spot. Blood exploded as his blade made contact with flesh, and the dragon screamed in pain and fury. Don't be fooled by his appearance, Sephiroth said as he landed his blade untouched by the dragon's foul blood. It is not as strong as it looks. Naruto nodded as he once more took control of his body. Mana swirled around his katana, and soon his sword became encased in ice. To imbue one's weapon with an element is a feat only the most accomplished mages would attempt, and it is a feat Naruto had fully mastered. It seems against a creature who so favored fire, ice would be the best choice in battle. Naruto charged at the dragon, his swords raised its ice armor, forming misty clouds around it. He jumped just as the dragon's tail swung towards him and circled behind the great beast. With another jump, Naruto landed on the base of the dragon's tail and plunged his sword deep into the beast's skin. The dragon screamed again and thrashed around to rid himself of this unwelcome foe. Naruto held firm, and grabbing the hilt of the sword with both hands, he began to run up the dragon's length, pulling his blade along and creating a massive gash in the monster's back. As Naruto pulled the sword out and jumped away from the creature, the dragon gave one last anguish howl and fell to the ground. Sephiroth seized this opportunity and leapt high into the air, and then brought his sword down and buried deep into the creature's skull, killing it instantly. Before he could recover his sword, however, several daggers whistled through the air and landed next to the silver-haired swordsman and exploded as they touched the ground, enveloping Sephiroth. On the other side of the dead dragon, Naruto swung his blade with a speed that made it invisible to human eyes. Several clink could be heard, and 3 daggers dropped out of the air. Show yourselves from the burning fire. Sephiroth emerged unharmed, though his eyes were narrowed in barely suppressed anger. From the shadows around them, no less than 12 men had emerged, all of them dressed in the attires of the Wutai ninjas. In their hands they carried a variety of weapons, swords, daggers, maces, and staves. Slowly they approached their target and formed a circle around the 2 remnants of Wutai. How pathetic, Sephiroth sneered as he swung his blade lazily, causing several of the shinobis to jump back in fright. Seeing this, Sephiroth laughed. Such fear in your eyes as you beheld me, and still you would dare to confront me. You're either very brave or very foolish, or perhaps a bit of both. One of the men gritted his teeth in anger. These 2 that stood before him, he would not forget their faces in 1,000 years. How could he, when each night those 2 demons haunted his dreams? He still remembered that dark and stormy day when those 2 had descended onto the battlefield like the angel of death who had come to harvest the souls of the living. They were cut down like wheat before a farmer's scythe, and their blood covered the entire battlefield. They were the demons that dwelled in the darkest pit of hell, evil given physical forms. Silence, it is you who shall perish this day and atone for the thousands you have slain, he screamed, partly in righteous fury, partly in fear. Naruto chuckled silently, his mouth contorted slightly in his mirth. Thousands, the blonde asked as he watched his foes face. Fear and anger are powerful weapons when used against your enemies. Indeed, I have killed thousands, but where 1,000 men had failed, do you think 12 could succeed? The same ninja roared as he drew out his weapon, 2 short swords that had been strapped to his belt. Shut up, die! And with that the 12 shinobis charged. Naruto dodged the swipe of a kunai and slammed his fist into the attacker, who grunted as fire consumed him whole. But Naruto did not stay and watch as a second attacker ran at him, his katana swinging wildly. A sword user, Naruto thought as he dodged the initial strike, and then did something that shocked the man to his core. The blonde grabbed the blade, the sharpness of the edge cut into his skin and drew blood, but Naruto did not seem to feel the pain. Then die by your sword. Full currents of electricity ran up the sword and then through the man's body, frying his brain and organs. The man gave an unintelligent scream and fell backwards onto the ground. A simple cure later, and the wound on his hand was nowhere to be found. Beside him, Sephiroth was cutting down the shinobis like flies, his sword a silver arc that danced between them, claiming their lives with its blazing kiss. Only a single minute has passed before Naruto reached the last of the shinobis. Though the man had lost an arm and a leg, he was still alive. Barely his hands wrapped themselves around the man's windpipe. Naruto brought the dying ninja close to his face. That was rather a disappointing performance, wouldn't you agree? Naruto asked softly. He wanted to see the despair in the man's eyes, a trait no doubt given to him by Kyuubi or his darker side. The man only grinned a bloody grin up at Naruto and mouthed the words, "You fell for it." Then his eyes rolled up to his skull and he died now. Banishment, screamed a voice as a man leapt through the trees and headed towards the two swordsmen. Too late did Naruto realize that the shinobis they had just killed were meant only as a distraction long enough for this spell to be completed. Banishment is one of the most potent time and space spell, creating a mini black hole and send its target to another dimension from where there is little chance of returning. Just as he was about to attempt an escape from the effect of the spell, Naruto felt his body froze in his track, for even as mana swirled wildly in his hands, Naruto saw the face of the caster, and with it the floodgates of memories opened wide. It was the face of Zanka, twisted by hate and injuries he had received at Naruto's hands. Why? She sobbed as she questioned Naruto, who found his limb frozen not with excitement nor fear but an alien sensation he did not understand. Why did his chest hurt so when he gazed upon the grieving visage of the young girl? Was he injured, or did the girl possess some sort of power he had not been privy to? For once the Kyuubi did not make himself known. "You monster!" The last word was hurled like a speeding javelin towards the stock-still boy, and this time the pain was such that he actually reached up and clutched his heart, as though it was the most natural thing to do. Why did he not use Akura? The boy wondered as the pain receded from his detection. He had used it for every other injury, yet somewhere deep within the boy's conscious he had recognized that such a pain could never be cured by any spell again. He lived the scene as vividly as that day. Then a voice snapped him out of his flashback, and then it was too late. "Naruto, what are you doing? Move slowly." The boy opened his eyes and saw first Sephiroth, whose sword had skewed Zanka. Then he saw the light of the banishment spell washing over him, and he knew no more. Though as his consciousness was stripped away from him, he could not help but experience a strange sense of deja vu, as though some time in the past he had been in a similar situation. Blackness drifting, the old man smiled kindly down at the emotionless child, whose eyes are as empty as the void that existed before creation. Soft winds blew around them, gently stroking the grass and tree leaves. Though the child could not understand, the old man had an aura that made the child feel comfortable, a warm, safe feeling. "Who are you?" the child asked, his voice still as sweet as an angel yet lacking in emotion. The old man chuckled. "That is not important. A better question is, who are you?" The child pondered upon this, his eyes frowning in thought. Then he looked up, and a rare confusion could be found in his gaze. "Who am I?" he asked. Again came the chuckle, not mocking, but understanding and kind. "You're the one who will save the world." The old man smiled and placed 3 small orbs into the child's hands, a green, a red, and a yellow orb. "Take them, you will need them in the future," the old man said as he straightened up and ruffled the child's hair affectionately. Then he turned and began to walk away. Cosmo Canyon Bugenhagen turned to face his companion, a worried look on his ancient visage. "It has begun just as you say it would, but was it wise to entrust the 3 master materia to that child beside him?" Another old man smiled. "Had Naruto been here, he would have recognized the old man as the one from his dream, the one who gave him the 3 materias. Of course I would entrust him with the world after all." The old man chuckled. "Who better to wield them than the child of the planet himself?" Bleakness, empty light, wake. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and was greeted with an unfamiliar sight. Standing near him was a pretty girl of about his age, with long pink hair flowing past her shoulders and emerald eyes full of worry. Where am I?" Naruto groaned as he slowly uprighted himself. "Who are you?" The pink-haired girl smiled in relief. "Phew, when I found you in the park I thought you were in a coma or something. Anyway, my name is Haruno Sakura. I am one of the students at the academy." Then she made a wide sweep with her hand, bringing to Naruto's attention the ancient structures that stood about him. The place felt weird, it felt peaceful, at ease. It was almost as though the place was part of the land itself, and Naruto could feel scent of leaves. "This may look like Wutai, but it certain isn't." This much Naruto was certain. For one thing, even Wutai was not this close to the land, and besides, after the wall, the city was devastated by the numerous assaults launched against it. Then the words of Sakura caught his attention again. "This place is called Kanagakura, the hidden village of Leaf." Why does he get the feeling he had been here before? Time skip 1 year later. Naruto stared at the village of Konoha wordlessly, though a soft smile could be observed upon his face. It was so different from the oppressing air of Midgar, where he had spent 10 years or so. The air was calm and fresh. There was no suffocating scent that lingered in the air of Midgar. Carried trees, something of a rarity in the technological city, blossomed all around him, a sea of greenery that surrounded Konoha. Staring at Konoha again, a voice behind him made the boy turn around. A silver-haired shinobi smiled and waved his other hand holding an orange book. A forehead protector was pulled over one of his eyes so that only a single black-eyed grinned back good-naturedly at the blonde. Unlike most ninjas who had passed Naruto by on the streets, Kakashi knew that the boy could probably destroy the entire fire country if he had wanted to. Possessing a strange power called magic Uzumaki, Naruto had already demonstrated the power of a Kage, a very strong one at that, perhaps even as strong as the fourth before his death. When the boy was first brought before the Hokage, some misunderstanding soon lead to a conflict between the blonde and a short-tempered Anbu. The battle, if one could call it that, was over before it had begun. As far as Kakashi knew, the unfortunate shinobi is still in intensive care. After that, the Hokage had sent away the other ninjas and talked to the boy privately. Though Kakashi did not know what transpired between them, it was clear that a deal had been struck, one that seemed to be beneficial to both parties. Then the Hokage had called for him to test the boy's power. Therefore Kakashi had done so under the assumption that Naruto was another one of those prodigies like Itachi Uchiha. Boy, did he turn out to be wrong, very wrong. Kakashi counted that spar as Naruto had called it the closest he had ever come to stare death in the face. It had ended with him lying in a crater, most of his bones shattered to pieces, and a single katana pointing to his throat. Kakashi was beaten completely and utterly. At first, he was able to keep the boy at bay. Naruto was skilled, no doubt, but his speed left a lot to be desired. The boy was faster than some chunin even, but next to that of a jonin it pales in comparison. Then an oddly colored aura flared up around the boy, and he had shouted something called slow. A blinding white dome had covered the entire area, and when it cleared, Kakashi discovered to his horror that Naruto was now moving at a speed that was all but a blur to him, which of course resulted in a rather bloody beating at the hands of the blonde. It was no joke either, for Naruto's strength was only a few notches below that of one of the legendary Sannin Tsunade. The ground where the two fought is still covered in craters. The last time he had checked, even scarier was the fact that the boy had apparently used no chakra to augment his strength, being the infamous copycat ninja. However, Kakashi had become extremely interested in that slow of his, which looked like something that would be very useful in his line of profession. So later, when the medics have finished patching him up, he had approached the boy and asked about it. Naruto had told him that slow is not a jutsu but something called a spell. The blonde had explained slows down time within a limited area, causing everything caught in its field to move at a much slower rate. Of course, since those of Konoha had never ventured into the realm of time, it was rather futile for Kakashi to try to understand the principles of space and time manipulation. Nonetheless, Naruto did teach Kakashi a few useful tricks, and in exchange the copy ninja had taught the boy chakra manipulation and control, something the boy was not familiar. Eventually the two became close associates in their exchange of ideas, each able to benefit in the presence of the other. As time went on, Itaki also came to know how fortunate he was during that spar, something the two of them never repeated again. It had been a Sunday afternoon, a few days after Kakashi had gotten words that he would become a Jonin sensei again. He had found Naruto meditating in his usual spot, the top of the Hokage monument, and like always struck up a conversation with him. Soon the subject of strength came up, and Kakashi had explained the various ranks of ninjas, the missing nins, the Kages, and such. Then he had asked casually about how Naruto compared to them. Ever since the spar, Kakashi had the feeling that the blonde-haired boy never went full out during his battle with the Jonin. His doubt only strengthened after seeing the strange and powerful techniques the youth had at his disposal. Naruto had considered for a moment, then admitted that in his normal condition he was probably at the level of a Kage, something that had not come as a surprise to the son of White Fang, for he had already suspected as much. The next words Naruto spoke, however, shocked Kakashi to his core and made the Jonin very careful around the boy. For some time though, if not for certain complications, I could destroy the fire country, were Naruto's words. Kakashi-san. Naruto frowned as he added the honorific, something he was not used to doing back at Midgar. Still, he had best follow this land's customs if he wishes to stay away from needless trouble. Kakashi was one of the few ninjas Naruto had made acquaintance with when he had landed in the elemental country of fire, and he had been the one who had helped Naruto to settle in the village of the leaf, not to mention introduce him to mana chakra control. While the mana level of these ninjas is much lower than that of a soldier, they were able to control their smaller quantity with unmatched precision. The timing, the release, and the distribution of the mana were made for maximum efficiency, with almost not a single drop of mana wasted. Furthermore, it seems because of such precise control, the shinobis of Konoha, or any other hidden village for that matter, is capable of doing things that even Naruto found difficult. For one thing, they were actually able to increase their body's limitation by conducting raw mana through their being increasing their speed, strength and stamina, and unlike power-up spells, this kind of augmentation will last as long as the user has enough mana to sustain it, a permanent booster spell of sorts. Unfortunately, this means that techniques such as Dispel would be devastating when used against the ninja population, since a shinobi continuously supplies various body parts with mana/chakra, and since the likes of Dispel drains away all active mana around a person if a ninja was hit by such a move, it would continuously drain away his mana supply until he either close off his mana source or until there is no mana left in him. Still, despite its weaknesses, if used in short bursts, this practice could still give Naruto an upper edge against a foe. Moreover, he would need all the strength he could gather if he were to find a way home. The only other person who had managed to return after being hit by a space distortion spell is a man by the name of Zeon, the previous soldier commander. However, the spell that he had received was an incomplete one, so it still left traces of itself behind. Using these faint traces of mana, Zeon was able to locate the position of Gaia and open a wormhole leading to it. However, for Naruto, no such luck exists. All traces of the banishment was gone, and with it any way of determining Gaia's location in the vast space, while Naruto could just rip open the fabrics of time and space, then hope for the best. There are worlds out there many times worse than the one he had landed in. Sometimes it is best not to push your luck too far. He was stranded for the time being. Ryu, for your thoughts. Kakashi stood next to Naruto and stared down at the blonde, who was deeply engrossed in thought. Not much as of now. Naruto admitted, "What is it you wish to consult me with?" Kakashi-san, the boy was cold, too cold. He had reminded Kakashi of the Uchihas. No, not like Uchiha, the skilled Jonin corrected himself. They were cold in a haughty sort of way, acting cold towards others due to their arrogance and the belief of Uchiha superiority. Naruto, on the other hand, is cold in a way that suggests a complete disregard of life. There was no pity in his eyes, not hate or anger when he fought. Those eyes were like the orbs of death, twin pools of eternity that gazed back from the abyss. Even Kakashi had trouble controlling the tremor that raked through him the first time he had seen those eyes. Only a silver of humanity is hidden beneath those unnatural cerulean orbs. Well, just to talk, you know. The copy Nin chuckled softly and leaned against the rail of the monument, raising the book to his eyes. "Anyway, I won't be seeing you as much now that I have a team to look after again." Naruto knew the concept of teams, but did not think much of it. Teamwork was important, but it held one back from gaining the true potential. As long as one relied on others for strength, he could never attain greatness. This is why in Soldier there's only associate and no teammates. Besides, judging from what Kakashi and the Hokage had told him, these Genin's junior ninjas only partook in the most degrading missions in a so-called effort to build up teamwork. Pathetic. Really, ninjas are killers, murderers for hire. The sooner these children can understand that concept, the better. Pulling weed out of some old women's garden is never going to achieve anything other than make the Genin soft and weak. How could Konoha expect their younger generation to accept their role as dealers of death if all they did was waste their time on menial labors? Congratulations, I suppose. His words were soft, but he did not hide the scornful gaze in his eyes. Kakashi shook his head slowly. Naruto was not the only one who held the current training system in disdain. He himself had often wondered at the wisdom of making Genins look after stray cats when they should be learning how not to freak out once they were forced to kill. Psychology seems a far more important subject for these Genins to learn. Who are they? Naruto's question reached his ear. Ah, the usual. Kakashi waved his hand dismissively. Still absorbed in his book, occasionally he allowed a perverted giggle to escape from his mask, an action that reminded Naruto surprisingly of Zack. Naruto shrugged. Kakashi was infamous for 4 things. 1. His chronic tardiness is legendary. 2. He was considered one of the strongest Jonin in the village. 3. He was a Jonin sensei who had failed every team he had so far. 4. He was a known pervert to whom Ika Paradise meant the world. Interestingly enough, on a later date, when Naruto introduced Kakashi to something called a hollow sphere along with Zack's stash of adult videos, the poor Jonin had to be rushed to the hospital for a massive blood transfusion. However, I digress. Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Makinezo. Kakashi continued. Not a very promising lot, I'll say this much. Uchiha is considered a genius by most people, but he is too caught up in his revenge for his clan. You know the Uchiha massacre? Naruto nodded. Kakashi had told him of the massacre, of which one Itachi Uchiha had been responsible, and the others, well, Makinezo is an idiot at best. Kakashi sighed. He is the biggest prankster in the village. However, because his parents are filthy rich, he usually gets away with that kind of stuff, and I guess their arrogance must have rubbed off on him. That boy could give the Uchihas a run for their money. An arrogant fool, a rather dangerous combination. If truth be told, Naruto summarized, he would do well to quickly adjust himself, or his life may end well before he accomplishes Anything of recognizable importance. Kakashi dipped his head in agreement. He liked talking to Naruto even if the youth was many years younger. At age 12, Uzumaki is already far more wise and observant than most adults, able to zero in on the important details and notice things most people would skim right over. Many times the boy had provided important insights on cases that had even Kakashi baffled. Agreed, the Cyclops ninja grinned as he flipped another page. And then there's Haruno Sakura. Graduated with top marks, but from what I can tell her chakra supply is downright awful. Still, with such limitations she probably would develop an impressive chakra control if time allows. Well, if she could get over her silly infatuation with that Uchiha boy. Naruto shrugged. It doesn't seem as though this team has much to offer from what you say, Kakashi acknowledged with a sigh. A fool, an Avenger, and a fangirl. I could not imagine a worse team. If I tried, the Haruno will follow whatever the Uchiha said without so much as a second thought. Mizo and Uchiha is like oil and water, and the Uchiha is so bent on his revenge that he doesn't give a damn about his teammates. This is a K.I. waiting to happen. At this, Hatake Kakashi's face darkened as though ensnared by some private memories he did not wish to share. Well, Naruto frowned and thought, while what you speak of is the likely truth, there is still a chance that they might surprise you. Coal can transform into diamonds under extreme pressure. Perhaps these three can do the same then. He smiled, not a wide smile, but at least Kakashi could tell the boy is smiling. Who knows, I might even observe the three of them. It should provide sufficient entertainment. Kakashi chuckled at the boy's acid humor. Hi, the silver-haired ninja agreed. Feel free to watch if you like. Naruto nodded and walked to the edge of the monument. Kakashi was already informed of his ability of flight, but it still made the silver-haired Jonin queasy to watch. Something about being able to fly without wings just doesn't sit right with the man. I suppose you gave them the usual speech right down to the part about the consumption and regurgitation of nutrients, Naruto asked as he turned to face the ninja. Kakashi's single eye formed an upside down U. Oh yes, I told them not to have breakfast. You know that's one of my traditions. They will hate you doubtlessly, Naruto said, and leapt into the air. Though I suppose given your rather degrading view of them, the feeling is quite neutral in your part. Tenten's eyes twitched dangerously as the bun-haired girl's right hand came dangerously close to the concealed pouch where many of her weapons are stored. By all that is holy, if her green spandex teammate Rock Lee does not cease his meaningless screaming this instant, she will forcefully put the boy out of commission. Beside her, one Huganiji, the prodigy/top student of his year, is valiantly, but in vain, trying to block out Rock Lee's loud and moronic proclamations. A desperate attempt to save what remained of the white-eyed Genin's sanity. Currently the boy's eyes are tightly shut as he debated with his inner self, weighing the pros and cons of listening to Lee's rambles versus sealing the idiot's chakra pathway. Oh wait, the guy can't use chakra, damn it. Niji found it hard to think. YOSH, if I don't punch this log 500 times I will run 10 laps around Konoha on my hands. The energetic Genin screamed for everyone within 5-mile radius to hear. Most of the people looked in a mixture of confusion and horror before doubling their pace, wanting to get the hell away from the phantom sound, resulting in several car crashes, numerous ninja collisions, and other property damages to countless, to mention the perpetrator on the other hand, having no idea the public disturbance he had caused, continued his practice, cracking the wooden stake before him with his powerful punches. As a boy born with the inability of using chakra and thereby ninjutsu and genjutsu of any kind, Lee had only one other choice: to become a pure taijutsu user. Since he first set this goal for himself, the boy with the massive eyebrows has pushed himself to the limit, trying to reach his dream. In fact, his sensei Guy, the self-proclaimed green beast of Konoha, had remarked on more than one occasion that Lee was a genius of hard work. While many a ninja may perceive the equally thick-browed Jonin as something of a moron, to gain his recognition is not an easy feat. Of course, having Guy for a sensei, especially with the closeness of the bond the two of them shared, it was little wonder why Lee not only inherited many of his teacher's powerful moves but also rather abnormal behaviors that had been known to disturb even the most battle-hardened shinobis. Therefore Lee went on his training completely oblivious of his two teammates' intention on painfully subduing the boy. The killing intent the two Genins had emitted had completely flown over the boy with the bowl-cut hair. Of course, before their bloody plan could be carried out, a single poof announced the arrival of their sensei, who had gone to the Hokage's office to get Team 9 a mission. Hello my youthful students, the green beast of Konoha has returned at last, and with a C-ranked mission, so all three of you may prove your youthfulness. Yash, let your youthful flame burn brightly, screamed the Jonin at the top of his lung. Tenten's twitch increased in pace. Niji's hands made a throttle motion. As for Lee Jai sensei, I shall prove my Fire of youth for you Lee Gai Sensei Lee. On and on they went until the exchange of emotions ended in an extremely disturbing scene of passionate embrace as the two spandex-clad ninjas hug each other. Somehow logic be damned, the background had suddenly turned into that of a sunset beach complete with crashing waves. Neji could actually hear the screams of agony emitted as his brain cells committed suicide and droves the image of tight spandex pressing against each other overloading their nucleus. Tenten on the other hand felt her stomach revolt and the need to hurl at the spot. Luckily she had gotten control of this impulse and managed by sheer will of force to push back the wave of nausea. This should be made illegal. The thought echoed in both Team 9 members' mind more than once. They wished that this were the Middle Ages so that the two of them had legal excuses to burn the two green ninjas at the stake. By the time the two of them parted, the better part of an hour and Niji's brain cells have passed away. Finally Guy turned to his two remaining students and addressed them. This is an easy infiltration mission. We are to head to one of the villages in the land of rice fields and steal some business paper. I trust you are all up to the task, my youthful students. Tenten inclined her head ever so slightly. Lee shouted something incoherent and pumped his fist, and Niji was Niji before they could head out. However, something walked into the clearing. Two of something actually there. Standing before them was the infamous copy Ninataki Kakashi, and by his side stood a boy of perhaps 11 or 12 dressed in a black cloak, not unlike those worn by the ANBUs, though a great deal more elaborate in its design. Ohio Gai-san, the lazy one-eyed jonin, greeted, though his attention seemed to be focusing on a small orange book in his hand. Kakashi screamed the other jonin in surprise and excitement. How are you, my hip rival? Before he could finish, Niji spoke up. Sensei, should we not proceed with our mission? Yosh, you are right Niji, we must proceed with the important mission entrusted to us, screamed Guy in his usual style before striking one of his good guy pose. But when we return I shall challenge you to a duel. Kakashi glanced warily at the green-suited ninja. Whatever the copy Nin waved his hands dismissively. You what a cool response from my eternal rival. Guy began to weep at his rival's hip gesture. Excuse me Kakashi-san, but your students will not enjoy the already 4-hour-long wait. From beside Kakashi, Naruto spoke up softly, drawing all attention to himself. Unlike most people, however, Naruto remained as stoic as ever under those searching gazes. Who is this? Kakashi Guy asked, measuring Naruto up and down. A student of yours. The Cyclops ninja shook his head as he flicked a few silver strands of hair from his eye. Naruto-kun is a good friend, isn't that right? Naruto frowned. Good associate seem a more appropriate term, since I do not agree with certain behaviors of yours. Ignoring the shocked glances the two of them received, Kakashi and Naruto disappeared on the spot. However, Guy had noticed that no swirling of dust and leaves accompanied their teleportation. It was as though somehow both Kakashi and the blonde-haired boy had vanished into thin air. Even stranger, the green beast of Konoha could not even trace the Churka movement. The Uchihas had always been one of the most prominent clan in Konoha's history since their rise to power during the founding of the hidden village of Leaf. The Uchihas had involved themselves heavily in areas of politics and military, going as far as to establish the Konoha military police force as a clan that specialized in fire elemental jutsus. The Uchihas have been considered by many one of the strongest clan in Konoha, if not the entire world. However, their ticket to fame lies not in their powerful techniques but in their inheritance, for each Uchiha is born with a bloodline limit known as the Sharingan. The Sharingan is a blood limit that lies within one's eyes. Once activated, the user can copy almost any form of jutsu and use it as his or her own. Furthermore, the Sharingan, the mirror will eye, grants its wielder incredible perception, allowing him/her to track movements of great speed and even seeing through and reverses genjutsus cast upon the user. There are even rumors of other powers that lies within a Sharingan master's grasp, though the Uchiha clan is reluctant on confirming those suspicions. Opposition often arises when one obtained a great power, and in the Uchiha's case it is no different. The Sharingan eyes become coveted powers, and there have been disturbing reports of various Uchiha members murdered, their eyes stolen. Furthermore, the ability of the Uchihas to steal jutsus has always been viewed by other ninjas in a negative light. Indeed, throughout time the Uchihas have been called thieves and scoundrels, honorless robbers who pillage the hard-learned techniques of others without so much as a by your leave or thank you. Such shameless roguery had been the source of resentment for many ninjas both inside and outside of the Fire Country. As one could see, even the mighty Uchiha clan is not without its enemies both within and without the walls of Hidden Leaf. The most significant of their opposition is none other than the Hyuga clan, whose bloodline limit, also a Dujitsu, is just as powerful if not more so than the Sharingan. In addition, since the head of the Hyuga clan also sat on the Council of Elders, the relationship between these two powerful houses are rather strained throughout the ages. The truly ironic thing, however, is that the destruction of the Uchihas did not come from the unseen enemies that the Sharingan users have tried so hard to balk, but from one of their own 5 years ago. One Itachi Uchiha had massacred his entire clan in order to test his powers, or so the now missing Nin genius had claimed. Only one person other than the traitor Uchiha was left of the now fallen clan. Itachi's younger brother, a boy by the name of Uchiha Sasuke. Ever since his elder brother's betrayal of the village, Sasuke had pushed himself to the limit, trying to gain the power needed to exact his revenge. Yet no matter what he had done, in the past 5 years Sasuke found himself unable to escape the shadow that Itachi had cast over him, so he pushed himself even further until vengeance became the only thing that mattered. So hateful was he of the older Uchiha that what was once a noble and righteous goal has been twisted by the dark whisperings of the voice of wrath. A black seed was planted in the young Uchiha's mind, a seed that would one day sow his destruction. As of now Sasuke knew none of this, nor did the village that had raised him on a pedestal as the last remaining Uchiha still loyal to Konoha. The people of the Hidden Leaf had practically worshipped the ground the young Uchiha had walked on. Everything was delivered to the boy on a silver platter, and everyone went out of his or her way to respect the heir of a mighty legacy. Yet at this moment in time the high and mighty Sasuke was getting his pre-verbal but handed to him, and once again the haughty youth was reminded of the fact that he was not Itachi. Kakashi was toying with him. It was the one thought that drifted across the youth's mind as he was pulled underground after performing the grand fireball technique. Damn it, if he was Itachi, then the stupid Jonin won't dare humiliate the young Uchiha like this. At the thought of Itachi, the sinister claws of envy and hatred once more ensnared Sasuke's mind. Even more infuriating, however, was the fact that Kakashi had brought along with him a boy of his own age, but one who addressed his soon-to-be sensei as an equal and perhaps in some ways a superior. The blonde, who now watched the scene with marked disinterest, was cold and aloft. It was though all of creation mattered not to him. He watched the world behind those cold and dangerous blue eyes, missing nothing but liking nothing. The blonde reminded Sasuke of Itachi in so many ways. With gritted teeth Sasuke tried to pry himself from the hole. He had to get those bells. He just had to pass this stupid test. There's no way in hell he was going to fail. He is an Uchiha. The survival training had gone terribly. Nazo, having tried to cheat in the exam by stealing the lunches beforehand, had been tied to the stake. His teammates warned not to share any food with him. Needless to say, such an ordeal did not suit the pampered boy at all, and it was quite a long time before Nazo had managed to calm down from his shouting, and that was only because he had ran out of saliva. It was only by pure luck that Sasuke had to shut the boy up. Offered his own bento to the Maki, who, being the spoiled prince that he had accepted rather ungraciously. This action caused Kakashi to appear suddenly before the trio, a thunderstorm raging behind him, and announced in a deceptively kind voice that all three passed. He then proceeded to explain the how and why of this exercise, putting great emphasis on the importance of teamwork and the trio's own faulty traits that prevented them to move as one. During this mini speech, Naruto had observed that of all three now genin shinobis, only Sakura seemed to have paid attention to Kakashi's words. Sasuke had scoffed off the advice as something that would hinder him, and Nazo obviously have the attention span of an ALAKI awaiting to happen. Indeed, Naruto silently repeated Kakashi's words in his mind. Right now, go home and get some proper rest. Tomorrow we'll start off with some D-rank missions, Kakashi said, and dismissed the gathered genins. Then he walked back next to Naruto. Seemed like they passed, he said in a conversational tone. I did not foresee this, Naruto admitted. It seems that the idiocy of Maki truly did work in their favor, if only by serving as a source of annoyance. Kakashi chuckled in agreement. Well, I still have some paperwork to take care of in Hokage's office, so I'll see you sometimes later. With that, he evaporated in a puff of smoke. Naruto continued to stare a few moments longer at the site where Kakashi had disappeared, and then began to walk away. Before he could get a few steps, a figure emerged from the trees and jumped in front of his path, blocking his way. It was the raven-haired boy he had seen during Kakashi's test, Uchiha Sasuke. However, the boy looked rather angry and excited at the same time. May I be of assistance to you? Naruto inquired, though the boy's expression boded nothing good. Fight me was all Sasuke said as he threw several shurikens at the surprised blonde. Even as Naruto dodged out of the way, Sasuke charged towards him, fist raised with lightning speed. The Uchiha jabbed at Naruto's chest with his left fist, which Naruto caught with ease. Growling, Sasuke tried to punch the blonde a few more times. Each attempt was met with just as much success as his previous one. At last, feeling tired, Sasuke leapt back from Naruto, panting slightly. Why? Naruto spoke, his face a blank mask. Sasuke said nothing as he charged again, using every taijutsu he could think of against the unknown opponent before him. Yet like his punches, his prized speed and taijutsus were as child's play before the other boy, who did not even move from his spot. As he countered them, Sasuke could almost see the mocking laughter dancing Within Naruto's eyes, despite the fact the two never made any eye contact, it was like Itachi all over again, only this time Itachi seemed so much stronger. Suddenly he was pulled back into that nightmarish world when his brother stood amidst the flames covered with the blood of his family. He remembered again those cold Sharingan eyes that made him relive the massacre of his clan repeatedly until he thought that he'd gone mad. Such painful memories aroused a fury within the youth Uchiha's heart, one that burned as black as the deepest canvas of the night. With a roar of hate, Sasuke formed several seals and shouted Katango Kakyu no Jutsu from his mouth. A massive ball of flame was exhaled, enveloping the boy before him in its blistering heat. However, almost as soon as Sasuke had used this technique, he began to regret it. He had lost control. To his rage again, he kept forgetting that he was not facing Itachi but someone who had never done him any wrong. Yet one look in those cold and merciless eyes, and somehow the image of his brother seemed to merge with that of the blonde until there were no differences between the two any longer. He wouldn't die, Sasuke thought in self-comfort. He had used a great deal of chakra behind the technique, but it was not truly fatal. The boy might suffer a few burns, but nothing life-threatening. Besides, no one would care if some nameless boy were hurt in a sparring practice against the genius Uchiha. Right before he could answer that rhetorical question he himself had posed, a soft voice sounded within the burning sea of fire. I see a black aura surrounds you, Uchiha, one that spoke of the death and destruction that would follow in your path. From the roaring flame, Naruto emerged unscathed, his cloak whipping in a supernatural wind. His eyes, which were glowing a brilliant blue light, focused on Sasuke, who found himself staring into the darkness of creation itself. And yet it is but an ember compared to my own. Slowly Naruto walked before Sasuke, who was still transfixed by those eyes. A lesson you would do well to take to heart, Uchiha Sasuke, he whispered, his voice death. Do not challenge powers of which you have no understanding of. With a blur, Naruto struck Sasuke squarely in the stomach. The raven-haired boy gave a grunt of pain, his visions blacking out completely. A sickening crunching sound could be heard as an unconscious Sasuke was launched backwards, breaking a great many trees in his flight until it was cut short by a massive boulder some 50 feet away. Luckily for Sasuke, no permanent damage was done. Naruto had pulled back a great deal of his strength, or else the genius would have been sent off with a lot more than a broken rib. Naruto was still emotionless as he strolled away from the scene, his mind going over and analyzing all that has happened this day. The meeting with Sasuke he had not foreseen, but already his computer-like mind has considered this new factor and prescribed a new course of action. It seemed obvious to Naruto that the quickest and easiest method in dealing with the Uchiha would be to end his existence. The thoughts of vengeance have taken far too deep a root to be purged out by conventional means, and there's a definite lust of power in the boy's eyes. When the two of them had fought, it may be much better if the village was without the presence of this troubled youth. A weapon, Uchiha maybe, but he is a weapon that would willingly turn on his masters as long as more profitable opportunities could be observed elsewhere. Still, he supposed that it was fair to give the Uchiha a chance to redeem himself. The human mind is truly an amazing thing, and one whose actions could never really be predicated. Maybe Naruto was wrong. Maybe Sasuke would turn out to be the savior of the shinobi village. Only time will tell. Should the thought of betrayal arise even once within Sasuke's mind, Naruto would not hesitate a moment in eliminating this potential threat, for such is the agreement he had made with the elderly Hokage. In exchange for shelter and other necessities, Naruto would protect Konoha to the best of his abilities until such time that he has found a way of returning. The power of a soldier is something to be feared indeed, as elemental countries will soon learn. Time skip. A cliff overlooking a section of Konoha Forest. Naruto watched the scene below with marked disinterest. Had it been another ninja or even a civilian, they might have found the plight of Team 7 to be humorous, but humor is an unaffordable luxury for the blonde, an artificial creation of science and magic for who even the faintest of smiles is a rare commodity. And though slowly the frost that held his heart prisoner is loosening its frozen grasp, he still could derive little joy from the chaos that lay before him. For the life of him, the boy with the sun-kissed hair could not understand the logic, the purpose for the three Genin's future assassins and spies to partake in so menial and derogatory task as the recovery of a domestic animal. It seemed to him that such a meager retrieval mission did not rank very high on a shinobi's list of duties, nor did it serve any greater purpose other than warrant needless frustration amongst the three youth. As far as he was concerned, the sooner these children learn of the brutalities that accompanied their chosen profession, the better they would prepare for whatever trials waiting ahead of them. By the time the young soldier had turned 9, thousands had died by his hands. At an age when other children still nestled in the warmth of their parents' breasts, he had single-handedly stayed armies and brought down entire cities. At an age when other children still experienced a life of little horror and fear, a life of bright lights and laughter, he had assumed the mantle of an Angel of Death. These ninjas though differs from him in their degree of power serve but the same overall purpose, so why is it that the three young shinobis below him still indulged in so trivial a task? Perhaps it was because the members of Team 7 are, despite their differences, still human, and he Uzumaki Naruto was something else entirely. Though they dwelled in the same dimension, sharing the same plane of existence, their worlds remained eons apart. With an inaudible sigh, the young swordsman sat down upon the rough surface of the cliff and watched in silence, not understanding why Kakashi's team would content themselves with chasing after the same feline for the 7th time in the same week, especially since from his vantage point the cat looks perfectly happy where it is. Maybe it is a ninja thing. Meanwhile, Sakura prayed reverently that both the cat and its owner would have the decency of drowning themselves in a large lake, or if failing that, die horribly in a fire. For God's sake. Her previous teacher, a chunin by the name of Iruka, had never once in his life told them that their days as genin would be spent doing such meager and meaningless tasks. Certainly as the lowest ranking shinobi, she and her teammates are expected to work their way up from pitifully easy D rank missions, but is there any reason why she would be forced to capture the same damn animal for the 7th time in the same week? In fact, the only thing right now keeping her from skinning the cat alive out of sheer spite is the thought of the generous payment they would receive at the day's end. The task is infuriating enough to drive any sane man mad, but she supposed the money later on would make up for it, maybe biting back a curse. The pink-haired Kunoichi dodged the low-hanging branch that, or so it seemed to her, appeared out of nowhere. Oh sure, this exercise is supposed to improve their teamwork, but at the thought Sakura threw a sly glance at her no-so-secret crush, one Uchiha Sasuke. Although she was not the most empathetic of persons, but even she was able to tell that the handsome boy was not in the best of moods, dark shadows clouding his refined features, his eyes burning with utter loathing. The Uchiha prodigy had the look of one who was ready to commit murder if not for the fact that Sasuke had wanted to keep a perfect mission record. Sakura was certain that the Uchiha survivor would have had no qualm in sending the little beat to hell with a fire-style great fireball technique in 4. Once the little beast in context was not referring to Nezo. Speaking of Nezo, Sakura thought as she ducked and dodged through the foliages, glancing around for sight of the brat. Where the hell is that? Oh wait, never mind, no doubt the poor excuse for a ninja is still in that ditch, struggling in a futile attempt to escape, allowing herself yet another sigh of hopelessness. Sakura turned her attention towards the supposed sensei of their squad. Itachi Kakashi is a shinobi of legendary renown whose name is feared and resented far and wide by the enemies of the Leaf, the son of the White Fang, and a shinobi rumored to have penetrated and copied over 1,000 jutsus. Kakashi was held by many as one of the greatest jonins of his generation. Unfortunately, as a teacher, Sakura knew she really should feel grateful that some god in heaven had taken a liking to her and placed her under so powerful a ninja. But really, now could she really feel any sort of gladness under the guidance of a pervert so fixated on that abomination? At this moment in time, every ounce of the silver-haired shinobi's attention is focused solely upon a small orange book that went by the name of Ika Ika Paradise. It was a book that contained within its pages some of the most perverse content known to the race of men, and a book that Kakashi particularly worshipped, yet somehow illogically, impossibly, despite the fact the man is paying absolutely no attention to the terrain that stretched out before him, he is still able to avoid each and every obstacle that intruded upon his path with a grace and facile that was downright insulting to the pink-haired teen. It's almost like the man had a third eye somewhere that Sakura did not know about, and upon further reflection did not want to know about. The human body is home to so many disgusting organs, so her attention returned to the mission at hand, and Sakura began to pick up her pace, trying to end this exercise while still retaining some of her slowly fading sanity. Even as she weaved between the towering trees, the rather pretty Kunoichi could feel that at the back of her mind her inner persona is demanding blood. Damn that cat, damn it to hell. 5 days later. You wish to see me? Naruto asked softly as he appeared before the Hokage, his face a blank mask of indifference. There were no telltale smoke or scattering leaves to announce his arrival. The boy had simply appeared amidst a wave of dissipating chakra. I would assume that the subject in discussion is one of some importance. Sand engaged the boy with his piercing gaze, a gaze that would have turned the eyes of the bravest of his ninjas, but one that did nothing against the freezing ceruleance of Naruto's own. The boy had been a godsend for Konoha, of this much the elder Hokage was certain. His strength and skill, far surpassing what a boy of his age should retain, had proved to be an invaluable asset for the village of the Hidden Leaf. Although hardly a year has passed since the boy had arrived in this foreign land, and yet already he had rendered more service to the land of fire than most ninjas in their entire lives. The capture of the traitor Mizuki, the execution of a number of IWA means the recover of several forbidden scrolls. These Accomplishments are but the tip of the iceberg for young Naruto. It made him feel guilty that he should call upon the youth's service, yet again disturbing the quiet and peaceful life the boy is leading, but there is no choice. The council had particularly demanded it of him. It seems that a number of those senile old fools had gotten the notion that their precious Uchiha, or would that be Sharingan, is not being provided with sufficient stimulation, stuck as the boy is with D-ranked missions, so they petition the Hokage to allow Team 7 more difficult tasks in order to unlock the full potential of the Uchiha survivor. So seeing no real harm in this, the Hokage relented and gave Team 7 a fairly easy C-ranked mission, which incidentally is what led Naruto to be in the Hokage's office at this time. The mission seemed to be a simple one on the surface: the protection of a bridge builder from occasional bandits and marauders that prowled about until such time that the man could finish his construction project in peace. Yet having looked through the underlying political and economical situation of the Land of Waves, there seemed to the Hokage to be far sinister forces afoot than simple brigands. For one thing, Tizuna's bridge, one that upon its completion would connect the Land of Waves with the main land, clearly placed him at odds with a businessman that went by the name of Gado, a man who had monopoly over the small island country for some time. Obviously, if a new pathway is built, it would have robbed much of Gado's influence in the country, and that is not something the wealthy criminal mastermind could condone. No doubt in his attempt to eliminate this threat, Gado would be willing to employ any actions necessary, including dealings with shinobis and in particular Nokonins, although Team 7 would find little trouble defending the old man from simple low lives and scrums of society. Attempting to confront other ninjas is quite another matter. I see. Naruto spoke at length after the Hokage lapsed into silence. You wish me to render them assistance if such becomes needed? The Hokage nodded. Several agents of mine operating near the Land of Waves reported to me shinobi activities in the vicinity of that area, one of those coming from a man by the name of Momochi Zabuza, formerly one of Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin Shu, the 7 shinobi swordsman of the mist, as well as an A-ranked missing nin. If he is indeed under the service of Gado, then Team 7 may well be in mortal danger. Naruto nodded as he stared at the file. One of the ANBU handed him. Upon it is the picture of Momochi Zabuza carrying his enormous zanbato, and behind Zabuza is the figure of someone Naruto could not quite make out, though judging by the form seemed to be but a child. So Zabuza is it? Out loud, Naruto chuckled softly. In action he had seen Sephiroth done many times before, not because he was pleased, but because he was interested by the subject, and whispered to himself, I wonder how will his zanbato stand against the might of my Muramasa. Staring at Naruto's elegant and regal face, the Hokage released a bated breath. The boy seemed willing, though his face remained unreadable. The first for the senior fire shadow. I would not have asked you to do this if I could help it, he sighed, but if I were to send one of my shinobis to aid Team 7, other nations might see this as an act of aggression on Konoha's part, and seeing as how the relations between the various villages are tense as it is, such a provocation could serve to spark conflicts anew. Enough. Naruto silenced the man with a wave of his hand. He was one of the few men who could speak to the Hokage in such a manner without the least consequence. I know of such complications well. My time in your library is not ill spent. You owe me no debt for this service, seeing as how I am already in yours in the first place. It is but simple repayment for your kindness and shelter, nothing more. With that, Naruto vanished from the room almost as though he had never been there in the first place. The office once more lapsed into silence before the Hokage reached into his robe and took out his treasured pipe. Lighting its contents, the old man took a long drag of tobaccos before he turned to gaze at the sky outside, where he could just make out a small speck soaring into the distance. Well, now I could finally rest easy without those foolish elders getting on my case with Naruto as their bodyguard. Not even Tenzabuza could have given them trouble. Taking a look around at the towering paper works that still waited for his approval, Sarutobi gave a long groan. How he hated paper works along the road to Wave. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he surveyed that land that stretched about him. A fierce battle had taken place here, of this much he was certain. The land is scarred by craters and marred by winding fissures. Countless trees were snapped in half by some unseen force and swept into the nearby sea, not to mention the wild mana signatures that still lingered in the surrounding atmosphere. Judging by the various kunais and shurikens that lay scattered about the road, the blonde felt it safe in assuming that at least one of the participants of this mortal combat is of the shinobi order, and as for the other, tracing a finger across one of the fissures, something akin to anticipation flashed across his indigo eyes. These are sword scars, the kind left behind by some blade of gigantic size. A buster sword perhaps, or a zanbato. Momochi Zabuza had been here as well. Still he could yet detect the mana traces of Kakashi, which seemed to suggest that Team 7 had escaped from the encounter alive if not unharmed. As for Zabuza, at this the boy's eyes glowed a ghostly azure, for he could still sense an alien presence in the air, one that was faint but definitely present. The demon of the mist is alive as well, if only barely so. Now all that is left for him to do is to seek out Kakashi's team, and protect them from within the advancing shadows as was instructed to him by the Hokage. The Uchiha is a valuable asset to the village, and if at all possible no harm should befall the only true Sharingan wielder still loyal to the leaf. How very troublesome, Naruto muttered as he took flight again towards the direction of the wave country, hoping that before he should arrive Team 7 would not entangle themselves in any deeper complication nor come to any further grief. Many miles away, Shikamaru suddenly sneezed loudly, frightening away the cat that his team was supposed to capture and earning himself a good smack over the head from a very annoyed Ino. Nice going, jerk. The blonde ex-friend and rival of Sakura growled in a dangerous voice as she turned to search for the missing beast. Even Choji shot his friend a daggered look before joining Ino in her search and sensed that he should be subjected to future physical activities. The lazy Nara blinked several times and grumbled to himself, troublesome women. Dinner at Tazuna's house was a funny affair, having arrived bruised and battered, bleeding from scratches and wounds that covered them from head to toe. It was a testament to the shinobi's endurance that only hours later all 4 members of Team 7 found themselves fit enough again to gather around the supper table for a long-deserved dinner. Well, to call it dinner is a bit generous use of the term, for it was really nothing but a rather scrawny steamed whole fish and a few dishes of wild vegetation that grew around the village. Even Sakura, whose daily meals are fairly bland and tasteless, found the food difficult to swallow. To be fair, by Wave's standard this was akin to a feast, and Tsunami, Tazuna's attractive daughter, really outdone herself in making the ingredients editable, so Team 7 chalked it down without complaints. Well, almost without complaints. Nezo, in one of his many less tactful moments, would no doubt have blurted out some hurtful and offensive comments had not Kakashi, in all his wisdom, stuffed the boy's mouth with a chopstick full of rice before any harm could be done. Then the team is introduced to Inari, the 10-year-old grandson of the bridge builder, who after one glance at the ninjas proclaimed their inevitable doom at the hands of Gado. Sakura bristled, Nezo growled, and even Sasuke looked affronted. Fortunately, Kakashi managed to hold back the 3 genins before they inflict some painful lesson upon the boy. It was quite a normal day for a ninja, really well, until soft footsteps sounded outside. At any rate, at the gentle noise all activities ceased almost immediately, and the room lapsed into complete silence. The inhabitants waited with bated breath as Kakashi made a quick hand gesture. With a soft puff, the copy nin vanished in a whirlwind of dust and leaves. Naruto Kakushi's eyes opened wide as he recognized the hooded figure sitting atop Tazuna's modest little house. The boy opened his startlingly blue eyes and gave the silver-haired Jonin a curt nod of confirmation, before settling slowly back to his meditation. What are you doing here? Kakashi probed uncertainly. He knew as well as the Hokage that as a special independent agent of the Hidden Leaf, it was Naruto's duty to eliminate all possible threats to Konoha from within the village itself, which means that the boy had no business whatsoever doing all the way out in this god-forsaken land. And Kakashi certainly did not believe that Naruto had come here for sightseeing reasons. Naruto just isn't human enough for that sort of thing. A mission from the Hokage, Naruto explained, simply to oversee the safety of the Uchiha. Well, that certainly explains it then, thought the Jonin somewhat bitterly. He knew that the council practically raised the Uchiha upon pedestals of gold, but he had no idea that the depth of the council's obsession with the Sharingan was such that they would have sent one of the most powerful men in the entire world as the boy's bodyguard. You're mistaken, Naruto said suddenly, as though he could read Kakashi's thoughts like an open book. I am merely sent here due to the underlying politics of the area. Kakashi nodded. As a country independent of shinobis, the Wave Country would remain a neutral faction should ever war arise. If however an agent of Konoha could be observed in the area, other nations may very well see it as an act of territorial expansion, and so may err in their assessment of Konoha's intentions. Naruto, on the other hand, is a face completely unknown to all the elemental countries, and so his presence within Wave would cause very little alarm. So I guess you'll be joining us then, Kakashi said at last as he looked up from his thoughts. No, the reply was cold though not unfriendly. No, it would be for the best that my presence does not come to detection until such time that it is needed. I will observe and follow your team in secret and lend my aid when I deem appropriate. Naruto folded his arms across his chest. To his surprise, Kakashi noted that when Naruto spoke of the genins, he did not refer to Uchiha but to all 3 ninjas in training. Please, carrying on as you would have in my absence. With that, he vanished again so completely this time that Kakashi could not even pick up a single chakra trail. So even Naruto is in this, huh? After a moment has passed, Kakashi looked up towards the sky where hung the new moon in all its pale and freezing glory. This certainly is the best piece of news I received in days. The day after Kakashi spent preparing his team for their eventual encounter with Zabuza, he led his team to the outskirts of the village where he proceeded to demonstrate to the three amazed Genins tree walking. Yet although the silver-haired shinobi managed the feat effortlessly, the Genins found themselves hard-pressed to advance even a few steps up the looming growths. To the surprise of all, it was Sakura who was able to master the exercise well before both Sasuke and Nezo. It seems that her meager supply of chakra had allowed her a far greater control of it, exceeding both that of Nezo's and of Sasuke's. Unfortunately, while her control is admirable, her stamina left a lot to be desired, so after exhausting all of her chakra, the pink-haired girl instead headed towards the construction site where she could keep an eye out for Tazuna or any sign of Zabuza. As well, Nezo had quit fairly early. As a boy raised in luxury, he was utterly used to the hardship that accompanied the shinobi life. About half an hour after Sakura had left for Tazuna, the boy, still unable to get but a few feet above the ground, threw a tantrum and left, leaving Sasuke to practice alone in the forest. The days afterwards were rather like this, consisting of training and more training, as slowly both Sasuke and Sakura managed to improve their abilities little by little, while Nezo making no progress at all. Kakashi had scolded the rich boy for his laziness and lack of determination, but all the spoiled brat did was wave his hand dismissively and claim that he did not need the training since he is already so strong. Also, Team 7 learned of the tragic story behind Inari's inconsiderate behaviors, and despite the boy's venomous words, they, with the exception of Nezo, could not help but feel sorry for him. Even Sasuke showed some sympathy towards the child, since he of all people knew well what it meant to lose a kinfolk, especially someone like your father, before your very eyes. Yet there is something else that occurred in these days, something that not even Naruto had foreseen. It was something insignificant perhaps, but to him it was a turning point in his life, even if he did not realize it now. He had spent the day meditating in the field and consulting the Kyuubi for his advice. The fox was quite generous with his words, and although the Biju could not comprehend much of human feelings, the gist of his words held great wisdoms within. Nonetheless, so time passed around him without his noticing, until a soft hand stirred him from his concentrations. A beautiful girl stood before him, dressed in simple homespun dress, her hair flowing freely past her shoulders. You'll catch cold sitting here like that. Her voice was soft and melodious like the song of a nightingale. She smiled brightly as Naruto blinked several times, adjusting to his surrounding. Haku studied the boy before her with calculating eyes. She was a good judge of character, and just by looking at someone she was able to piece together much about that person. The boy is extremely handsome. His face seemed to have been carved by angels themselves. His features, his movements, even the way that he carries himself held within them an air of regality and grace, as though the boy were some sort of nobility or even in possession of a lineage of kings. It was then she noticed his eyes and was taken aback by the sight. His eyes were cold indigo twin chips of ice that burned darkly in the cool air. They say eyes are windows to a man's soul, and yet in the boy's eyes she could read nothing. They were guarded and harsh, revealing nothing of the boy's heart that lay beyond. There was only emptiness, a void stretching before her, threatening to consume her in its freezing grasp. Then the boy spoke up, and the spell was broken. My gratitude for your concern, though it is unneeded, he said as he rose to his feet, dusting off imaginary dirt from his fluttering cloak. It is almost impossible that I would be afflicted with disease such as the one you speak of. Haku blinked. How unusual a response. She was not expecting this at all. Well, in any case, you're welcome. Yet even as Naruto turned to leave, Haku caught up with him again. She did not know what came over her. She simply acted on impulse. She had to know more about the boy. Who is he? What is he doing here? And more importantly, why is his gaze so cold as to be annihilating? It was as though his heart was encased in a coffin of ice where it remains an eternal prisoner. She remembers well that nightmarish time when her own heart too had been frozen before he found her and took her, and before he gave her a purpose again. Perhaps the boy was no different. Perhaps that is why she ran after him. Could it be that he too shared her pains? She had to find out. Wait, I never did learn your name, she gasped as she finally caught up with the boy, who turned and beheld her in puzzlement. Mine is Haku, by the way. White, it suits you. Naruto rolled the name around on his tongue several times before speaking, his voice still as cold as the dead winter, though Haku thought she could feel a trace of warmth buried deep underneath. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto. Hours later. I am terribly sorry to have imposed on you. She was quiet, soft-spoken, gentle, and delicate, a far outcry from Sakura's assertive natures. There is no need, Naruto said as he plucked the medical herbs from the ground and placed it in Haku's basket. To those who associated with him before this seemingly normal action could well be sigh that the dread apocalypse has come, and even the blonde youth knew not why he would have aided the girl squatting beside him. It felt right for some odd reason. It was as though his body acted independently of his mind, as though some greater existence is pulling his strings for him. There is something about the girl, something strangely soothing. Naruto could not pinpoint the reason, but he felt comfortable around her more so than when he stood beside Kakashi or even Zack. Speaking of Zack, had the soldier witnessed this scene, he would have no doubt walked away wanting to give the two young lovers a chance to be alone. Sadly, Naruto, having no comprehension of the concept of love, or in his case attraction, puzzled still over the odd sensation he experienced. The Kyuubi was of no aid either, for as great as the fox is, even he had no knowledge of love's mysterious workings. So, what are you doing in the middle of nowhere at the crack of dawn anyway? Haku asked, wanting to strike up a conversation and learn more about the enigma known only as Naruto. Normally shy and reserved, Haku would have never done anything so bold, but in the blonde's case there are exceptions to be made. Naruto frowned as he stared into Haku's eyes. The same could be asked of you, though. For your information, I am meditating on certain events that have occurred in the past few days. Haku raised an eyebrow. Meditating? Are you some kind of ninja and samurai? Naruto shook his head. No, I am neither ninja nor the samurai you speak of. I am a mere wanderer who happens to have certain associates within the ranks of the shinobis. There was something the boy was keep hidden from her. Haku knew this, and yet so well guarded was his secrets that she could not but mark the tip of the iceberg. The more she learned about the boy with the sun-kissed hair, the more she found out that she did not know him at all. Though neither a ninja nor a samurai, the boy's form radiated his power, and that cloak which he donned is anything but common. He is like a puzzle, one that Haku is nowhere near solving. So I guess you're pretty strong then, if you could be friends with people like that, she said at last, when the boy once more withdrew into his silent sanctuaries. But are you truly strong? Truly strong? Naruto echoed her words. At age 12 very few entities could have stood against Naruto and lived, and fewer still could match the boy's blade and magic. Yet somehow the blonde had a feeling that this was not the strength the strange girl spoke of. Do you have anyone special in your life, someone you are willing to give up your life for? At this, Haku smiled as though recalling some distant and misty memories. When Naruto gave no response, she continued, when people are protecting something truly precious to them, they can become as strong as they must be. A long moment of silence passed between the two teens, and at last Naruto finally spoke up. If before his voice is as the dead of winter, now it has become a raging blizzard. Though still the same emotionless tone, his words were chilled marrow itself. No, I do not have someone like those you speak of. Was it his imagination, or did Haku's eyes soften at those words? You have no one, she pressed. When Naruto nodded his reply, a sad smile appeared on her face. You know, I was that once before my precious person found me, so if you believe enough, someday your precious person will find you too. And with those words the two of them parted, Haku walking back towards the way from whence she came, and Naruto was left pondering at the words she left behind. What did she mean, precious person, and what is this true strength that she spoke of? He asked no one in particular as he leaned back and stared at the clear sky. Then his face once more became shrouded in ice, and whatever emotion Haku may have brought on faded like the morning dew. Haku, what a strange individual. I have a feeling that I would encounter her once more before long. Let us see then the truth in her words and the truth in her strength. They met several times after that day at the same spot where fate had drawn them. Always he would wait for her, standing amidst the fallen leaves, as still and silent as a statue. Always she would come, sometime to gather more herbs and plants, and other times simply to speak with the stoic swordsman. They talked of many things and never of themselves or the secrets that they hid from each other. Yet no matter what become the topic, always the conversation would steer back to the subject of a precious person. Did you find your precious person yet? Always she would ask with a smile so innocent, so pure, like freshly fallen snow. No, always came the same emotionless response, you'll find one soon, and her reply remained the same as well. There was something about her, something Naruto could not explain. Her eyes are so light, so serene, no murderous light could be found in that placid depth, only a strange kindness and longing. Naruto did not know why, but each time he parted from her he felt hollow, incomplete. It was not the unbearable feeling of loneliness, of separation, that so pained him, for he had been alone since his birth and will remain alone till death do claim him. Each time Haku left him there rose a feeling of taint white. That was the meaning of her name, and a more fitting one could not be found. She was like the virgin snow, untouched by evil. Her smile had no daggers, and her eyes concealed no betrayal. She was like an angel in whose grace all sins are washed away, and with her parting those sins, those heinous crimes, returned with a vengeance, and the horrors that he once embodied now damned him. Was this what the demons of hell felt as they gazed upon the angels above, gazing upon those blameless faces, that they could never become? Haku had told him that all children are born sinless, and in those short Moments he wanted to believe the fragile girl, but could there be redemption, forgiveness for Naruto, an affront and blight before God? Somehow the thought hurt him. It was a strange sensation, a burning, twisting feeling in the chambers of his heart. It was an alien experience, and yet at the same time it was so very familiar. Monster, a fragmented thought resurfaced from the sea of memories, a single tear-stained face branded into his mind. Those words had hurt then, and Haku's absence had hurt now. Why? Why did it hurt? Why could he feel such agony when no wound was inflicted upon his body? Why did he feel such torment when he was target to no magic? The scars of the flesh fade with time, but the wounding of the heart cuts to the very soul, though none could see it save for the fates themselves. A single, almost invisible crack appeared upon the surface of the icy coffin, within which lay the blonde boy's heart. Most of your strength has returned, Zabuza-sama, Haku said in a soft whisper as she stood beside the missing Nin of Kiri. The demon stared down at his dripping fingers, between which he had crushed an apple. Slowly he chucked and rose to his feet, dropping the pieces of the shattered fruit to the ground below. Grasping the hilt of his massive blade with the other hand, the man easily brought the gigantic weapon behind him. Excellent, he declared. Let us get going. Haku, of course, Haku answered, yet there was something strange about the girl, something almost like hesitation. There was reluctance in her movement as she neared the door, as though she did not wish to step outside. That boy Naruto. A faint blush spread over her cheeks as she thought of the handsome youth standing so quietly amongst the forest, his hair and cloak whipping about in the winds. Would Naruto still treat her the same? Would their relationship even endure if the blonde found out about this side of her? A merciless killer, an assassin. Haku knew it was strange that she should even have these thoughts from the vantage point of any denizens of this world. The two of them could be barely associates, let alone more intimate, and yet Haku didn't want to look at the world from others' eyes. It pained her to do so, though she would not admit it. Naruto had become something important, precious to her. He was the only person willing to speak to her, to listen to her dreams and her fears, to listen as she poured her heart, or what little she dared reveal. Zabuza-sama was a precious person to her, yes, but he was so far away from her, a distance that she dared not reach. Naruto was different. He is cold as the frozen north, as harsh as the arctic winds, and yet him Haku could reach. He was different from Zabuza. He was Haku's friend. It sounded stupid, but Naruto is the only friend Haku had in the world, the only one willing to befriend her despite her curse. The thought of losing him would have broken Haku. What if Naruto learned of her secrets? What if Naruto learned that beneath the angelic interior was a demon waiting to be released? Would he abandon her then, as her parents did? It was too painful even thinking about it. Haku, from beside her came Zabuza's coarse voice, shattering her thoughts. There was something about the girl this day, thought the demon of the mist as he studied his tool, something that troubled him deeply. For once the emotion that displayed upon the girl's face is not one of serenity but of turmoil. What could have changed the once placid Haku so greatly? Whatever it is bad news. A tool is no longer useful if it attained humanity. Is something the matter? No, it is nothing of importance, Haku said quickly as she tried her best to regain her composure. Zabuza frowned, watching the girl's retreating form. Something is definitely off with his subordinate, something that he could not quite put his fingers on. He will have to question the girl once their task at hand is finished. Halfway across the wave country, Ataki Kakashi looked down upon his own hands. It seems that I have completely healed. Zabuza would most likely be on the move again. Still, with Naruto here, there is not too much to worry about, I hope.